2, 1, audio sync.
Cool, let's go.
Bing, bong,
Hey,
bong.
baby. All right.
Hello.
Pod. We're back in
What up,
it.
everybody? We're up on the top of Coastal Towers right now.
Yeah. I don't know if you can tell by the view behind us,
The
but we've
view is
got
insane.
some
It's so
West
good.
Palm here.
Gorgeous.
Sadly, because of some of the lighting, we can't get the best view, which is actually behind you guys. So
Yeah.
sometime in the future, we'll be better at planning the time.
Definitely.
But
We'll get a
hey,
and we'll
sunlight
get a good
or
one.
so
What's it
apparently
called? Sunset.
Serena Williams lives
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
up
dude.
there somewhere.
Doesn't she
So-
own like the top 3 floors or
Top
something?
two
She
Top
does.
two,
apparently.
top 2.
Yeah. Which
Just
is
to
which is
keep the
nuts.
noise from the neighbor, like the
Yeah.
downstairs neighbors, like being too loud.
Whoa.
The very top, the very top
indoor-
floor is a court.
Her
Tennis
indoor
court on
tennis
If
the
you
court.
top.
really listen, you can hear.
Well, anyways, some other interesting news.
Devolved into the Roblox
I
stuff
actually moved out of Stinky Rink. today.
Rinky.
Rinky.
We
dinky,
moved
stinky,
all of my
rinky.
stuff.
Made his
I
escape.
had the help of these guys and Asher, and we moved all my stuff over to Ocean View, and I am now
Thanks, Sam.
rooming and living with Gage. So
Yeah,
it's pretty awesome. It's pretty
I'm
cool.
actually so excited.
Yeah.
I'm
it's
so
gonna be
excited.
so cool.
Which
We're-
there's so
oh,
many
man.
things cool about
There's
that.
a lot behind
But there was a
it.
huge God moment there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You got
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so after we did our podcast about lust
Yeah.
and pornography, we had a conversation and we decided like we wanted to be each other's accountability partners
Mhm.
with lust and also just with like reading scripture daily.
Yeah.
So we decided that, and this was before any of this happened, but Landon's been knowing that he wanted to move out of Rinker, and then one of my
Mhm.
suite mates was also wanting to move out of our place. So it was total God move. I was like, hey, we have a spot open. You should try to go for it. He's like,
Yeah.
And I got it.
And he got it.
Let's go.
and
That's
and
so
it was
cool.
so cool. But like you weren't even thinking in those moments of like, oh, accountability. You were just
No.
like, oh, he
Oh,
wants
He
to
needs
move.
somewhere to stay.
There's a place to
I
stay.
love
Right.
Gage. I love Stan.
And, right.
I love
and the
you know.
accountability partner conversation happened like weeks and weeks before.
Yeah.
Right.
And we were literally leaving Rinker last night after filming a pod, and I was like, hold on, guys.
Yeah.
You literally talked about wanting to be accountability partners, and then God moved
Yeah.
to put you
Made
in
you
the
guys
same
roommates.
room.
Yeah. Really crazy. But
And
it's awesome though.
Yeah.
I'm so happy. Like even just being in the room, like when everybody left after they helped me move all the stuff there, and then Gage stayed, and I was just like, oh my goodness, I'm living with Gage now.
I won't leave you,
It
Landon.
was so nice.
Oh,
it was
felt
so
good.
nice. I felt like somebody was there with me.
It still doesn't feel real.
yeah.
see.
Well,
And,
we
like-
also have not like it was today, so like
Yeah,
we haven't had a
right.
time
But,
to like
like-
decompress.
and I already told you guys this a little bit, but like I'm so excited for you just because
Yeah.
I know what it's like.
Slumber party.
Well, and and Jed
tickle
is on the
fights?
floor below,
Yeah.
so like
Yeah.
Literally.
Jed can come up and crash.
And what about Sam?
Oh,
But Sam is-
hey, everybody
Sam
relax.
is close enough.
Before we all start dogging on my very nice dorm, okay?
We're all a
I
little
think you
jealous.
guys are all
I
just
guess.
projecting.
I'm
yeah.
not jealous
You're just
of
projecting
Watson,
your oh, come
Lots
on.
I
of
just
the
want the
right,
kitchen.
bro.
That's the only thing. If I could have a
That's what I
a
was gonna
kitchen
say.
in my room,
I
There's
have
a, there's a
that's it.
communal microwave and fridge in on Ocean View, but that fridge basically is like put food in there if
It's
you want it to
hermetically
disappear.
sealed.
Yeah.
Also, like, I don't think anybody ever opens that.
I'm also afraid of like what's been cooked in that microwave before.
Also, our
It's so
elevator, our
carcinogenic.
elevator works.
Okay.
By the way, did I mention
Oh,
that
yeah.
our elevator works? It's lined with like.
Hey, what are we talking about
Bro,
today?
Mom
literally,
silver,
yeah.
bro.
Wait, what are we
Yeah.
actually talking about?
okay, so
I don't want to hear Sam talk about Watson anymore.
It was so bad
I could use a break.
Sam,
the
stop
irony,
talking.
The irony is that I would not shut up about how much I disliked Rinker, and that was I think
It was really
enjoyable.
funny. It was
and
so
now
funny.
It's that
Now
I
you
like
won't-
now it's just that I like my dorm, and
Sam and I are like refugees that have been accepted to. Sam went to a first world country. I went to like a good home in a second world country.
Gage and I are like foster parents.
like
Yeah.
foster parents.
They're doing the best
He's
they can.
a
with
little
what they've
happy to
been
be
He's
given.
there.
come back
Yeah,
from
it's
a
better,
war-torn
but
country,
He's
bro.
still like
Yeah.
he sees the
He's
first
not getting the
world.
kind of government subsidies that Sam's enjoying. Yeah. Anyway, the
Modern
legit
technology.
the legit topic. Today we're going to be talking about rest. And
Which
that's
I do very well in Watson, by the way.
Rest and relaxation.
yeah, little
And
R&R.
work. Well,
and work.
and work.
Well,
Rest and
rest
work.
versus busyness.
Busy
right?
versus
Right, right,
busyness,
right.
and not in the way that we usually talk about this of like you had a hard week, so take it easy.
Yeah.
Kind of just looking at it how like even on weeks where we don't have much happening, even if you remove productivity out of the conversation, how we cannot in this day and age, in this generation, let our minds take a rest. Because we're so addicted to, part of it's phones, but it's so many things of just constant stimulation, we need to, especially as Christians, if we want to connect with the Lord, have times of just silence,
Yeah.
of mental quiet, of solitude, real solitude.
Of just no stimulation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like not having your brain be
Yeah.
constantly rushed
Yeah.
with dopamine and
Yeah.
all of these different
Yeah.
things that our phones and interactions with people and whatever that we get from our everyday lives constantly give us.
Yeah.
But taking a break and like removing ourselves and resetting our brains is
Yeah.
something that we have gotten away from. Because even on like a Sunday where it's technically like everybody says, oh, Sunday, Sabbath, whatever, blah, 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 rest day, I'm going to get more rest. Well, that rest consists of I scrolled on Instagram for 2
Yeah.
hours. I watched a
Yeah.
football game
Right,
for half of the
exactly.
day. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And it's not like intentional naps or intentional time in prayer with God or just like lowering yourself and like removing that constant stimulation that we get
Yeah.
all the time.
'Cause
And we have abandoned that.
When you're scrolling on your phone, it's not rest. We tell ourselves,
Right,
it's like, I'm going
right.
to take a break. And it's like, it's the opposite.
You feel more mentally taxed after like 30 minutes of scrolling on
Definitely.
reels than just like laying there and just letting your mind just think.
Or
Like,
even laying there and having to listen to something
Right,
constantly.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like thinking, oh, well, I'm resting if I'm sleeping, and while I'm going to sleep, I'm, listening to a YouTube video or something.
Right, right.
And that's
Yeah.
not always bad
Yeah.
necessarily.
I just
but
feel like that's not
it's-
as bad.
But it's like there's so much to be said about learning how to be comfortable in complete silence with your own
Right.
thoughts,
Yeah.
which ties in a lot to what we just talked about yesterday.
Definitely.
actually.
Definitely.
Um,
Because I think
But
that,
yeah.
that mental noisiness and speediness is one of the biggest contributors to the propensity we have for anxiety and depression.
oh my gosh,
Yeah.
without
Because
a doubt, yeah.
what are those things that we're talking about? Whether they're anxious or depressive, they're thoughts that are just flowing at a crazy fast rate. And it's like we were saying, those well-worn paths, and we're running down them at the speed we're going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's so much to be said for just stopping and not moving.
Yeah.
And it's like
Exactly.
cultivating an ability to just sit in silence with the Lord. Because we see that so often in Scripture. He went away with
Yes,
himself
right.
and just sat with God.
Well, it's hard because we've become addicted to that constant stimulation. And so like when we're not being stimulated, our bodies are craving that. And that's why it's uncomfortable to sit and just think about, like, it's hard, it's difficult, it's not easy to do that. Like I struggle with it myself. Like I have to delete Instagram from my phone because if I don't, like I will spend way too much time scrolling reels. Like YouTube even. Like I'll end up on YouTube Shorts if I'm not careful, you know what I mean? Just scrolling because like my brain is just craving that constant hit of dopamine, of pleasure. And it's like we need to reset and detox our brains to be able to go back and just be quiet, because that's where God like communicates in, is silence. And
It's still small voice.
If we're
Yeah.
never silent, if we're never like just resting in his presence, then of course so many people are not hearing from God, quote unquote.
Right.
So many people will ask me like why can't I hear from God? Well, like why can't God speak to me? And it's like you're probably not giving him the chance to. And he's not going to shout. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
And I think this is one of those things where we kind of talked about on the lust episode, where if you set limits for yourself, it can seem cringe to other people, right? They're like,
Yeah.
really? You turn your
Yeah.
phone into black and white because
Yeah, yeah,
colors
yeah.
is like too stimulating for you?
Yeah.
And you have to delete Instagram
Right.
and like set these, you have this like app that sets limits for yourself. What are
Yeah.
you doing? Like just don't, but no, you have to. And I think it's important to recognize that within yourself. What do you use the most?
Yeah.
Go into your screen time, like right now, if you can, go into your screen time in your settings and see how much time you're spending on each thing. And it's embarrassing.
hours
Yeah.
and hours. Like,
Well,
And even so, like if you spent all that time doing nothing, it would be better off than what you're doing,
Right.
most
Agreed.
likely.
Right.
Well,
right?
and what you're describing too, when you talk about those limits, are boundaries, and then like that word is even further applicable than just the settings that I have on my phone.
Yeah.
But also, there's FOMO, fear of missing out of.
right.
Having the boundaries that if you need to rest,
Right.
and people are like, "Hey, come do this thing," you can be like, "Sorry, guys, I got to take care of myself. I got
Right.
to
Yeah.
do my own thing today. I got
Which-
got things to take care of."
that's good in that sense of
Right.
like, no, I need to take care of myself. You know what I mean?
Correct.
And like saying no to certain things to do that. It becomes different when it's like, I need to do those things, like I need to rest, I need to do whatever, but then you spend all this time on Instagram.
Yeah.
And Instagram is only going to take from you.
Right.
Like a lot of people have
Yep.
this idea that like, oh, well, it's just nothing. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
not good, it's not bad. It's like, okay, I'm wasting time, but it's not really. It's like it's taking stuff
Right.
from you. Like your brain is like giving it activity. Like they're selling your, like that's a whole different topic, whatever. But when you're resting
That's a
and
good
you're
one to
not
talk
doing
about.
anything, like your brain is forced to like regenerate and whatever. But on Instagram, on these different social media platforms, like when we're constantly being stimulated, like it's taking from our brain,
Yeah.
and so it's actually like mental activity, and you get off your phone and you're more tired.
Yeah.
Like your eyes
Negative-
hurt.
negative
your
effects.
brain is kind of cooked, quote unquote, cooked in a way, but it's just like there are negative effects to doing that, and it's not.
And you can have
restful.
really great ideas and thoughts and process a lot in your subconscious while you're
Right,
resting.
right.
It like
Yeah.
allows you to
Mhm.
gain peace.
Yeah.
And you'll dream about things or think about things that maybe you haven't thought of in a
Yeah.
while. It gives your brain time to regenerate. And
Yeah.
there's like REM sleep and all that. But talking about social media, because then when we've talked about this in different episodes as well, but when you're constantly intaking,
Yeah.
and then you're wiring
Right.
your brain to constantly need something to
Consume.
entertain it and to
Yep.
consume, and then you're
Yeah.
never ideating for yourself.
Right.
And some of the best ideas of history have come from people on
Yeah,
walks,
right.
people in showers,
Right.
people like
In
as they're
solitude.
sleeping, right? In
People
solitude.
who like there were great thinkers who
Oh,
they
man.
would be put in a season of like solitude, and
Yeah.
they're like, yeah, I got banished, and so I was in this cabin for 2 years,
Think,
and
like-
that's when I wrote, like
Bon
Rene
Iver.
Descartes.
Rene
Bon
Descartes.
Iver.
Okay, Bon Iver.
We were going two different
There's
places.
two types. Yeah.
Both great
That's so
thinkers.
funny.
yeah.
That's
But
really
like Bon
funny.
Iver, Rene Descartes,
Yeah.
Isaac Newton, right?
Isaac
Sitting
Newton.
under an apple tree,
Right.
right? Like seriously, you can just name
Yeah.
all
Well,
these things.
Rene Descartes, literally, he had like family trouble.
Yeah.
Rene Descartes, the guy who said, I think, therefore I am, wrote like what became the father of modern philosophy, got banished to this cabin in like snowy, Europe. And he was there for like 2 years. And he wrote the like most brilliant like dissertation on why God exists and why we exist.
Well, it just lets you search,
lets you
like yourself.
search.
and
Like,
Bon
it,
Iver wrote for Emma forever ago.
That song is great.
it helps you like.
It's a great song. No, I'm serious. I like that song. It's on Sugar Dam.
Well, it helps you sort out what's going on in your brain.
Yeah.
Like if we never give ourselves a chance to disconnect and to just like understand and think about like what we've done that day, like
Yeah.
what has happened that
Yeah.
week. Let me sort that out into memories, into
Right.
things that I think about what has happened. But if we're constantly like just shoving information or stimulation into our brain, like we never give it a chance to like clean itself up.
Yeah,
You know
and
what I
that's such a huge part of sanctification, because so much of our problems in intimacy with God and living in the Spirit is problems with unrepentant sin and an inability to self-reflect on what parts of us are impediments to
Yeah.
intimacy with God. And if you're never giving yourself time to reflect on the posture and state of your heart, because that's an uncomfortable thing to do, then you're not going to be able to air out the dirty laundry that Jesus wants to take care of.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then another thing to point out is when you're on social media, think about the things you're consuming. It's not just things.
Yeah.
It's usually bad things.
It's usually
Right.
bad
It's usually a
things.
loop
Right.
of bad things, and the more you interact with them, the more they show you.
Because those are the things that hold your attention.
Right.
And not only things that are morally bad, but things that create thoughts in your
Right.
brain when you could
Right.
be having other better
Right.
thoughts
Right.
about reflections on yourself of not only from intaking images that might be explicit and stuff like that, but then
Yeah.
also, do I have that car or do I wear those clothes or
Right.
is my life that cool?
Right.
Or what am I doing? I'm just sitting here in bed doing nothing.
And we
it's
tell her,
a
we
bad
justify
place to be.
ourselves of like, oh, but like, I'm not like thinking about it that way.
Yeah,
It's like, doesn't
right.
matter. There's
Subconsciously,
like
you
a
might be.
subconscious osmosis that will always take place. It's like,
Right.
it doesn't matter how naturally, good you are at resisting that.
Correct.
If that's what you're dwelling in, that's what's happening.
Well, and especially over time, though.
Right.
Like when you are only like, there's so much intake of that type of content.
yeah.
Eventually, like that is going to influence your subconscious.
Yeah.
And the Bible tells us to guard our hearts, right?
Yeah.
Because all that we do flows from it.
Mm.
And so when we're constantly filling our heart and our mind and like our spirit up with that type of content that's only going to point us towards worldly things, of course we're going to have worldly things flowing out from our heart.
Yeah. There was
So-
one thing that you said, Gage, a while ago that tied back to the pornography episode of like, you're going to have to set parameters that look cartoonish to most people.
Yeah.
The thing I would like say to them in response is like, well, of course my habits and things aren't going to reflect the state of the culture, because I don't want my mental, social, and spiritual health to reflect the state of the culture.
Exactly.
Do you know what I
Look at
mean?
the- in the
And look
world,
at the
but not of
results.
it, yeah.
Look at the
The
results.
results are awful.
They're awful.
Right.
And we all talk about the results, but we're talking about the symptoms and not the disease of like,
Right.
Gen Z is doing bad in X, Y, and Z.
But it's like, why?
Well, it's like, why? Yeah,
Like,
right.
go to
what
the
are what are
roots.
we doing?
Right.
What are we doing? And so how can we act that's different from the status quo? Because the status
Yeah.
quo's results
Well,
are so
it's,
bad.
it's not even just what are we doing. It's like what are causing those actions.
Right,
What are
right,
those
right, right.
actions stemming from?
Right.
And so much of being Christian too is being set apart as a person.
Exactly.
You should be very uniquely identifiable based
Right.
on the fruits that you have,
Yeah.
that you bring, and the boundaries that you have.
And well, and that's one of our most powerful things we were saying.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
even so much of this is tying back to past episodes, but when you were saying, you guys were talking about depression, you're like, I don't even want to give them laundry lists. You want to give them the example of you
Yeah.
on the other side
Yeah,
and how Jesus
exactly.
can change them.
Right.
We're going to be living examples. That's the best evangelism we'll ever
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
Spread the gospel, and if you need to, use words. Live a life
Right.
that's different from the status quo, because nobody will ever want that. They'll want what you're exhibiting, which is different.
And it
Right.
doesn't have to be an uppity different. If you
No.
think
No
about how
part
cool
of
it
it
is
is,
when you
yeah.
meet somebody who doesn't have an Instagram and you're like, "What's your Instagram?" "Oh, I don't have one."
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
You know, it's
Right.
but it's cool.
Yeah.
It's
very cool, and
cool.
usually it's interesting people.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like, well, what do you do when you take photos? I don't I'll print them out. I'll just keep them.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and they're
well,
interesting.
don't you need to show people what you're doing? No, it's in memories.
Right.
Memories
be up,
mean
Gage.
Exactly.
Well,
memories.
That's why they're interesting.
Oh,
though,
more
is-
than never had it.
it just is cool, and it's
I-
like
so
it
real,
is.
yeah.
It's super cool.
when people are posting, because it's funny when you see like we live in an Instagrammable place,
yeah.
but when
dude.
you scroll through Instagram,
That's so true.
you'll see people who like go down the shopping street, like Worth. It's called Worth Avenue.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They'll go down and they'll take pictures of like the store, but they're not
Right.
buying anything.
No.
They just take. It's like
They just wanna
anybody
say they
could
were
do
there.
that, and it's just weird. It's just weird.
It's just
like
weird.
It becomes a competition.
Yeah.
It becomes work. It becomes busyness.
right.
Well, and not even that,
Busyness,
but it's
it
also
becomes
just like,
busyness.
who cares?
Right.
I don't.
You know what I mean? Like,
And they don't either.
I'm glad
Nobody
that
cares.
that they're projecting that they're happy. Like, nobody knows if they're actually happy. You know what I mean? Because that's not a good way to measure happiness is by like what someone's posting on social media. But it's like there are so many people who I'm not close friends with who I follow, and it's like I see
Yeah.
a post and it's like cool, but like that didn't change my life at all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so much of our life is lived off of like caring about what other people think about us, and it's like they honestly are not really.
They don't
thinking
care
that
about
much.
you. That's the crazy thing. So we talk all the time about how self-interested we are as people nowadays and how obsessed we are with other people's opinion of us, but everybody thinks that way. Everyone
Right.
is focused on themselves. So the reality is, no matter how much you're outputting, nobody is going to think about you as much as you do. Nobody's going to care about you as much as you are projecting them to believe about you.
Right.
And so living for the opinion of others, that's so backwards because no one is ever going to, even if it's negative attention, nobody's going to give
Well,
you
and
that level
there's
of
no
attention.
rest in that because you're
No
never
rest.
able to stop thinking about it. You're constantly caught up in like, oh, what's going on in their minds? Like, like you're always so self-conscious that like you can never just rest and be confident in yourself because you're always so caught up in this game of like, how do I make myself more likable? How do am I doing everything
Yeah.
wrong? Am I blah blah blah? All this different stuff, and it's just it's like it's so busy, but in a
Yeah.
bad way, and it's like. My heart goes out to like other people, but also like when I do that myself, like it's
Yeah.
just taxing on me
Yeah.
all day. Like my social battery runs out so quick
Yeah.
because it's like just be yourself and don't care.
Yeah.
Like if someone likes you for and not the sense of like, okay, obviously if you're being like morally wrong, like that's you don't just be yourself and do whatever you want, obviously, but in the sense of like have confidence in yourself and don't like change.
Don't try to be something that you're not.
right. Yeah.
And to pivot, because I think we've nailed like what busyness of the mind is. To pivot to rest and like to camp out in that, it's like that's one of the most like straightforward things I think you can pursue. It's like it can be so hard to develop a prayer life and all those things, but rest is literally just the absence of work, busyness, and stimuli. And so it can be as simple as just like turning the things off and sitting down or lying down.
But
Just-
that
just
can be
l-
difficult for some people.
Yeah,
Right.
not to say that it's not
because of our
difficult.
culture. It like we
Yeah.
definitely we make people feel guilty for resting, for sleeping in,
Right.
for not being productive,
Right.
and it's which is so strange how
Yeah.
like if you're on your phone, it could look like you're doing something active, like
Yeah.
maybe you're writing an email. You don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But yeah, real rest is just like, and it doesn't necessarily mean doing nothing, right?
Yeah.
Real rest can be
Reading scripture.
Can be reading
could
scripture.
be-
It could be in a sense
It could
like
be going to the beach. You
we
know?
talked about this in one of our classes, but rest is doing the thing that you are supposed to be doing at that moment.
Mm.
Sometimes it's work, and like sometimes people will work 18 hours a day, and they say, and you know, if they're working at a volunteer place or something, and they say like, "This is rest to me. This is, I feel energized.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I'm filled. This
Well,
is what I
yeah.
need."
And that's like outside of social media, like society is constantly like from when you're born, like be busy, make a good name for yourself,
shoving it down your throat,
like
yeah.
always telling you like, oh, you got to save up for retirement, blah blah blah, do all these things, you got to work hard, like every day you got to wake up early,
Yeah.
don't think about like what's going on, like just you got to think about the future, be busy,
Yeah.
be busy,
And also in a way,
and then you get to the end of your life and it's like, I didn't take a day to enjoy any of it. It's
Yeah.
like it's like you skipped over the whole thing.
And I
You
felt
were
guilty in the
constantly
moments that I
tired,
wasn't
and
going
yeah,
for it.
exactly. And
So-
it leads to a really just unfulfilled life.
And if you think about the things that the Bible says, right? Some of the passages is like, don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow will worry about itself. And not to store up treasures on earth, right? Because
they can vanish in a moment.
they can and they will vanish in a moment. And we've seen that in so many ways. And there's just so many things, even in like the Hebrew culture, of the way that they celebrate rest, the way that they celebrate the Sabbath. God
Right.
himself rested. After 6 days of working, he rested on the seventh day. And that's so important.
Well, and
He
we've
did not need to.
and we've
but he did.
abandoned the Sabbath so much
Oh
in
my
our
gosh.
culture.
Yeah.
Like we have something every day of the week.
yeah.
Like Saturday, you've got something going on with friends or kids. You got some type of like game on the weekend. Sunday,
Yeah.
same thing is going on, and then obviously you're working all week.
yeah.
And so it's like it's society and culture, like they make it almost nearly impossible to have a Sabbath, like
Yeah.
if you want to be a normal functioning human, like
Yeah.
in our culture.
Yeah.
And it's like we've gotten so far away from like, no, like we're gonna turn everything off for a day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
crazy
our
to think
response
about
should
that.
be,
Like,
no, I will not be normal.
right,
Yeah,
exactly.
right.
But it's also like fascinating to think about like the Hebrew culture
It
of
is.
like a whole day, like like all of like the whole camp, like you know what I mean, like
Yeah.
all of the entire Israelite nation, nothing for a day. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And like obviously they took it to a different level that they were kind of abusing that commandment, but at the same time, like the thought of like, okay, now we need to like emulate that.
Yeah. And when I read it, I'm like, no wonder it was a command.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's like, we see what happens when we loosen the intensity and forget how much of an emphasis God places on rest. Because the minute we get an inch of like, oh, I don't have to, we take a mile.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, no wonder God was very much like, no, you need to weave this
Yeah.
into the rhythm of your
Right.
life.
And proper rest makes you more effective.
Oh, yeah.
And the thing is,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
society,
It minimizes
they don't
burnout.
just tell you don't rest, and it's not just a statement. It's a the way in which it's done is designed to make you feel self-conscious about it.
Yeah.
And
Right.
it ties
Mhm.
into,
Yeah.
you know, again, having your identity rooted in and through Christ, that this is
Yeah.
a practice that you do because
Yeah.
it's the way you live. It's a part
Yeah.
of who you are. And
Yeah.
you, and knowing the effects of when I rest, I'm being more able to be used by the Lord.
Right.
Versus
Right,
if I'm
right.
That's
allowing,
a huge one.
if I'm allowing external, you know, powers and society and their judgment on me for being set apart to suppress my ability to be used by God.
That's a
Well-
huge one because so
well-
much of the language around rest is take a you day, right? The modern
Nothing to do with
it's
you.
like it's
Yeah,
not to
that's
do
so
with you at
true.
all. They're like, "Oh, take care of yourself, self-care. That's why you're taking a day off." And it's like, "No. Like
It's about God.
it's all about God, right?
Well-
It's like if I'm going to be able to serve him, if I'm going to be able to be in communion with him, all these things, then I need to be resting. I need to be having silence. It's like, and I think that's why it's hard for Christians.
Well, and if you think about it too, there's so many people experiencing burnout,
Yeah.
and who are just like you said, Sam, not effective in their job because
Yeah.
first of all, they hate where they're at. They're always tired. They're just like something's just off in my, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they're not fulfilled because they're not resting for God. We're having these half rest days, or it's like, okay, let's like for example, we're all about to go on Christmas break, and
Yeah.
I think that we all have a chance to like have a lot of
Genuinely
downtime
rest.
and really
Genuine
like
rest.
genuinely rest. But what are a lot of us going to probably do is like we're going to play a lot
Doom
of video
scroll.
games,
Yeah.
doom scroll.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to like it's going to fly by, and by the time we're done it's like, okay, where did all the time for
Yeah.
rest go?
Am
It's
I
like,
coming back refreshed at
there's-
all?
And it's no wonder
Yeah.
that we're burnout, and it's like God is not necessarily just going to give you strength and make you feel energized because like you are wasting the time that he is
he
giving
gave you
for
an
rest.
apparatus
Yeah.
Yeah.
to be refreshed. He's like,
Exactly.
I want to give you these things.
Yes.
And I've
He's like-
told you
He
explicitly how I'm
literally
going to do it.
commanded
Yeah.
you to do it. He's like,
Take a
I'm
freaking nap.
telling you to
I'll
rest.
give you
Yeah.
power.
Yeah.
Like sit in silence
Well,
and
and-
I'll give you peace.
And rest can be really productive.
Oh,
and
right,
like you're talking about,
yeah.
if you're in a bad, they don't like where they're at, they're really tired. And it's like proper rest can make you think clearly.
Yeah,
It allows
yeah,
you
yeah.
to think clearly.
Yeah.
So that maybe in your rest, you think of that, where do I pivot to?
Right.
How
Right.
do I get out of this? But if you're, like we said a second ago, if you're never resting and you think, oh, I can multitask it, I can always think about it later, you're not
Right.
going to.
You're never
because
gonna do
always going to be preoccupied.
'Cause
And
we
your
have a-
subconscious is going to be occupied.
We have a list of priorities in our mind of things that we can drop and things that we can't.
Right.
And something like
Rest is
rest is
droppable.
always going to drop. It's always going to
Yeah.
drop.
We don't think it's productive.
We don't think it's productive. In the same way that we can always drop relationships, we can always drop time with the Lord. And what's ironic is we're talking about the only things that actually have eternal weight.
Yeah.
Right,
That's
exactly.
the wild thing. We always put emphasis on things like work, things like our advancement, but those are the things that will fade. The relationships that he'll understand. He's actually going to live forever,
Exactly.
God will understand if I skip out on the quiet time. I'm about to do something super good. It's like, well, he's actually always going to be here.
He's the reason you're here.
He's the reason you're here. And
He's
it's
the
like-
reason you're gonna be here,
Right.
In
Yeah,
for eternity. You know what I mean?
Right.
and like this is as much for me as it's like we need to all like constantly be reorienting our.
Well, and that's the thing
priorities.
is, it's like it's not for God. You're not resting for for your purpose and everything.
Sabbath
but like,
was made for the man, not
right,
man for the
right.
Sabbath.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because
Yeah.
God
Yep.
obviously
Yep.
like God doesn't need to rest. He's like that's a different topic for a different day outside of time. Whatever.
he was modeling it.
God created all things. He created rest, right? He
Right.
created work
Yeah.
itself. So understanding that like he knows what's best for us,
yeah.
like and following that plan, like he obviously working hard is a great thing and it is
Yeah.
a way to worship God.
Yes.
And I
But
found
you
a verse
can't
I'd like to
you
share.
cannot fully work hard if
Yeah.
you don't rest the way that you're supposed to.
Right.
This is kind of in contrast, but it's not. So yes, rest one day out of the week and rest hard.
Yeah.
Like rest like you mean it.
Yeah.
But then Proverbs 6 verses 9 through 11 say, "How long will you lie there, you sluggard? When will you get up from your sleep? A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come on you like a thief, and scarcity like an armed man." So
Well, it's interesting
I'm
because
glad you
it's
brought
like
that up.
it's that's not real rest, right? How long will you lay there like think about us doom scrolling, right?
Mhm.
How long will you just lay there and be nothing?
well, and it says, it's saying like folding your hands. Folding your hands means like you could be putting them to work.
Yeah.
When I think about that, I think of somebody like sitting in a chair rather than like sleeping.
Yeah.
If that makes sense,
Right.
right?
Right.
Well, yeah, you're not asleep, you're awake, but you're just
Right.
doing nothing.
Uh-huh.
Well,
Yeah.
and in that sense of like for we keep talking about social media, but like I'm on social media, I'm not accomplishing anything and I'm also not resting. So I'm literally like not doing anything towards my future.
And let's remember, to rest, you have to be resting from something.
right.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like you need to be work. Rest requires work, and we're talking about busyness.
exactly.
Busyness is the meaningless stimulation. But if we're
Right,
going to work,
right,
we
yeah.
need to have lives where we're actually outputting and creating and
Yeah,
pouring out.
Exactly.
Well, and
And-
doing stuff for others as well.
And
you know?
Scripture talks about this all the time. One of the things that the Bible is singular, because we can go on and on how Christianity and faith in Yahweh is different than every other religion, but it was the first religion to actually praise labor and not have a caste system of nobility. Almost every other ancient religion had an emphasis on the life of luxury and the ruling class,
Right.
and a sneering eye towards poverty. But so often in the Psalms, in Proverbs, in the ancient ones, it praises the laborer. It praises,
Yeah, exactly.
praises the man
Well,
who actually
praises, like,
does
servants
something.
and slaves.
Yeah, exactly. We're called to be servants and slaves, and
Yeah.
it's like
That is the ultimate work.
That's
like,
the
that is
ultimate
hard.
work.
That's the hardest work you can have.
Yeah.
And what's
is
interesting
being a slave.
is the elite class. I don't want to get into social commentary, but I also think it might be kind of important.
I don't want to get into
I don't
social
wanna go there,
commentary,
but I'm going to
but
go
I
there.
do, but I do.
I don't want to go there, but I'm going to go there.
Yeah.
It's interesting how the elite realized
Yeah.
they saw, wow, us being lazy actually makes us vulnerable
Yeah.
to becoming leveraged by the people who are out working all day.
Yeah.
So we're actually going to inverse it. We're going to capture and monetize all of their actions,
Yeah.
and we're going to design these systems so that the people that think they're working are becoming useless. They like the modern average unhealthy American looks as much like ancient royalty
Yeah.
or medieval royalty
Yeah.
as like it's they're pale, they're overweight,
Yeah.
they are not physically capable.
Yeah.
And now the elite, what do
Right.
they look like? They look like the peasants
Yeah.
from back then.
They're on the treadmill every morning.
They're seeing how much can I be active and outside and
Yeah.
getting sunlight and doing these things that would have been considered peasantry,
Yeah.
however many centuries ago.
Well, and I think a lot of it comes down to intentionality too. And I think a lot of intentionality has been lost in I see that in myself, but also just like this generation,
Yeah.
but also just society in general.
Yeah.
Of like okay, well, I don't know what I'm going to do on a Saturday, so I waste 4 hours of just like
Right.
of just scrolling,
Right.
of just whatever. Instead of being intentional, go read something, go learn something, go like do something new, build something. You know what I mean? But instead,
Yeah.
it's so easy to just fall into the same old.
Yeah.
This is easy. I'm just going to pull my phone out now and
And
just scroll for a while. You know, like it's
technology
just-
can be used to learn about things that are edifying. Like you can read
Yeah,
things on your
there's
phone
so
or listen
much-
to things
Right,
that
right.
are edifying. But no matter how you intake it, it's just because phones, I think, because they're so wide in terms of the interface, it's so easy to fall into the things that aren't good.
Yeah.
But it's like what we talked about in the other episode. Do they fall into the category of things that are good, that will create and produce good
Mhm.
thoughts, that will actually condone
Yeah.
that rest and
Yeah.
require it?
This
And
makes me kind of want to talk about like long versus short form content.
Ooh.
this is a good
Because
idea.
I like
one.
in the
yeah.
same way that there's like rest,
Yeah.
there's like kind of like rest in a modern way where it's subpar and it's not really rest.
Yeah.
There's also education. It's like
Yeah.
not really education, right?
2-hour Jordan
Right.
Peterson lectures.
Yeah.
Can you remember like scrolling through TikTok and you saw this like 10 fun facts you didn't know? Can you name any of them now? No
Of
way.
course not.
Even if you
Not
watched
even
it
one. Of course
earlier
not.
today, you
Not
can't name
even
a single one.
Well, but not even
It's
that.
just
But like
things coming at you.
the motivational
Most of
things
it's
that you
garbage
watch
anyway.
that are especially the short form content, but like even long term content, like how many times does that actually like make you go act on that?
No.
Right.
You know what I
It
mean?
just
Like
makes
we
you go
see
like,
it, we're like, oh, I feel good. Yeah,
While you're
yeah.
drooling from the mouth.
Yeah, and like putting the other like ramen noodle bite into your mouth.
Who's gonna carry the boat?
But there is just all this to say like
You take another hot Cheeto and put it in your mouth.
The crumbs and like the grease.
logs.
With the red fingers and just
Stay
like drinking my Vice Pepsi, bro.
Yeah.
Woo, that's
all of this to say like there is learning, there's education, and yes, that can happen online, but be careful what you're consuming because a lot of it is to feel good. It's
Right.
just more things
Yep.
to feel
It's all
good.
feeling.
It's all feeling, and when you have all these things just coming at you, you're not interacting with them, you're not
Mm.
learning.
Right, and you're building the habit to not act on things.
Yeah.
Because you're watching all
Yeah.
these short YouTube videos that make you feel motivated, blah blah blah, whatever.
Yeah.
And then you do nothing. So
And
it's
then
like
you do
you
nothing.
start building that path in your mind.
Yep.
That like, okay, I'm going to feel motivated and then do nothing. And
Yep.
that's not actually going to change your situation. It's actually just going to lead to depression because
yeah, and I
now
think
you're
that's-
unhappy with yourself and you're unhappy with the way that you're living. And
Right.
like you get caught up in that form of living and we end up like,
And I think that's the most dangerous justifier that we employ because it's easy
Yeah.
for us to see brain rot and be like, this is not helping me. But when you're like, no, my feed, it's all motivation and philosophy. And it's like, yeah, well, but if you aren't, like, here's my kind of philosophy of it because I'm what?
no, just the way that you, like,
It's funny.
I've had that conversation
continue.
a lot of times.
Yeah.
I like the long form versus short term because it's like sometimes you put on a sermon or like a really good thing and you have to be like, whoa, I really want to click away from this.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think you have to feel that if it's actually going to edify and stick
Right,
with you.
but
Like
even-
you need to get to that moment of being like, you need to get 10 minutes in, I think, to the
Yeah,
video
yeah.
for it to actually do something good
But-
to you.
but
Even if
even-
they say the most
yeah,
profound things in those
even
first 10.
long-term sermon, like you go on like what was the last Sunday morning sermon that you like remember and that you like change, like you changed something because of it? Like how many times do we go to a church
yeah.
and we're just like, that was a great message, blah blah blah. We talk about it for like 5 minutes on the way home and
Yeah.
then poof, gone
Yeah.
from your memory. Never act
Yeah.
on it ever.
Yeah.
And so I think we've just lost a lot of intentionality because it's difficult to be intentional about that. And going back
Yeah.
to rest, like it's difficult to be intentional about rest and
Yeah.
to choose to put everything away, phones, other people, like be in solitude in the
Yeah.
presence of God. And it's hard because he's going to reveal things to you
Yeah.
that you know you need to change. And for
Uh-huh.
me,
Yeah.
it's hard because it's like, there are things that I know I'm comfortable living that way. I'm comfortable
Yeah.
being on my phone all the time
Yeah.
because I don't have to face what God wants to show, like
Yeah.
what He's showing me about my life that needs to
Yeah.
change.
Well, and can we?
Oh.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
This is a big.
Yeah, yeah.
Another thing is when you're on the phone all the time, like you're missing moments to love others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think about this
Yeah.
all the time. Like
That's huge.
when I'm going like up and down the stairs, I will
Mhm.
see there'll be people on their phones, and they'll like walk past me, and they don't even register that I walk past them.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
And it's like, whoa, they're like a ghost. Like they're
Yeah.
not even interfacing with the world, and it's like, when it's in your room, it's like one thing, but when you're like in public, it's just crazy. I've recently gotten AirPods, and I felt a little guilty wearing them. Because when I pop them in, it reminds me of the I think they're called like thimble earpieces or whatever from Fahrenheit 451.
Fahrenheit, yes.
Yeah, and it's exact. If you read that
Wow,
book, the
yeah.
way it describes
That's a pretty crazy book.
Those
That's
things,
such a
Well, that's
crazy
what-
connection
describing
I've never thought of.
AirPods.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
literally
yeah.
describing AirPods.
Wow.
And so I have to be careful when I have them. Like when I walk around campus, I do feel a little guilty because they like excellent noise cancellation. I really like them, but but if people like say hi, I will not register it.
Yeah.
I'll see the
Yeah,
wave
right.
maybe out of the corner of my
Yeah,
eye, but like,
yeah.
it shuts you out. It totally shuts you out. You miss moments to love people.
Well,
And then it reminds me of the story of the Good Samaritan.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because like when the Jews walked past the man who had been robbed and beaten, there's a good chance they were in a hurry.
Yeah.
Right? And so often, like when we miss our chance to love people,
Mm-hmm.
it's because we're in a hurry.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And for us, it's very rarely a man who's been beaten up and robbed.
Yeah.
It's someone who has emotional, spiritual needs and hurt that it will take a minute or two of attention for you to understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Uh-oh.
It's the whole crew.
It's literally the whole gang.
come on, come on.
Well,
Do you guys want to? It'd be funny if they
You got-
walked.
yeah,
No,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
funny.
yeah.
That's funny.
No. Come
this
say
had-
hi really
This
quick.
had
Guys,
to be
say hi.
intentional because like they all just showed
They
up.
knew.
Guys, we
Uh,
have
I don't-
visitors.
Did they know? I didn't tell them.
We
I think
were
we
talking
talked
to
about it in the
them.
cab.
Oh.
Here,
Did they
this
not?
is
On camera.
Yeah,
Still
come
be
on
here?
camera. It'd be funny if they came on camera. You guys want to say anything?
There's a lot of them.
There's so many.
What are you talking about?
We're-
I knew I was.
Oh,
right.
Chelsea, did
I
you
was
break?
right.
Come
I
on. Hey, but I had you going for a while.
I knew it though. I
No,
told
you didn't know. You didn't know. Because I was like, what do you know? You know. And you didn't know.
I was going crazy.
This is a funny story. Arissa, tell them how good I
Tell
got
them
you.
about the pants,
You
Arissa.
get me.
I did get you.
We got you so good.
We got you so good.
and you were so upset.
I don't know about this.
Okay, so basically, me and Chelsea, we were walking and we ran into them, and I hadn't seen them yet today. But Chelsea had on one of our friends' pants. And Model the pants. Okay, guys. And they're really cute. We love them. But Jed and Gage both said as soon as they saw it, they're like, "Oh my goodness, those are Airly's pants." And I was like, "How on earth would you know that?"
Because we're observant and we like to compliment people's
No
outfits.
way, guys don't notice things like that. I was like, "There's actually no way."
No,
that's
I
actually
think they
kinda
actually
crazy.
do. I think they
Really?
do notice things like that a lot, actually.
But they tried to convince me that they didn't already know, and they just like both figured that out, and they were lying, and I was right because I didn't believe them. But I was kind of going.
She believed every word.
She
But-
was in awe. She was just
Wow.
couldn't believe it.
Okay, that's it. All right.
Yeah, Merry
Yeah.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Bye, guys.
Happy Hanukkah.
Lee, you can stay if you want. All right. Bye-bye.
Yeah, goodbye.
There was
What on earth
something-
were we even talking about?
There was something that I really, really,
no,
really wanted
yeah,
to
yeah,
say.
no, I know
Man.
where we were.
No,
No,
I know.
He's got it, he's got it.
I remember.
Oh, God.
We're back.
Okay.
I want to
So-
go next.
When you make sure that you're intentional about rest, right, and you like fill yourself up and rejuvenate yourself in the way that God has created it to happen, you are able to be better for other people.
Right.
Because when you are connected to Jesus and to connected to
Yes.
God correctly, then you are able to love and impact other people way more. And so rest is not something that we do just for ourselves. Like it is a great thing for yourself. Like obviously be focused on your relationship with God. But there, like Sam was talking about earlier, there is a lot of effectiveness that is stolen from us when we do not properly rest.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people who have like literally never properly rested in their lives.
Yeah.
And like anytime that I have like an actual restful moment, like it changes the rest of my week.
Yeah.
So like think about like what a whole day could do for you on a Saturday or a Sunday or a Friday. Like we need to be
This-
this is something
Yeah.
that is so
This-
much more important than we realize.
That's so good.
And that's the test.
That's the test. And I think it goes into the conversation we've had of like the side effects of Christianity. Seek first the kingdom of God, all these things will be added to you. And rest and the goodness of rest is a side effect of pursuing the most
Well,
important
and-
thing.
And why are we not seeing it? Because so many people are not willing to give up the world for that.
Yeah.
Because like
You're right.
we're not seeing the true effects of Christianity because like there's
Yeah.
not a lot of true Christianity.
Yeah.
Well, and-
people are not willing to
Yeah.
give up their world
And-
for
yeah.
what Jesus commanded them.
We're
to
not
do.
willing to make
And I'm
room.
guilty
Yeah.
of that more than anyone else.
Yeah.
Well,
Chief.
and like we were
Yeah.
talking about earlier, with the phones and everything, is biologically, like chemically, our attention span, like we're talking about short form, long form content, our attention span is being stolen. It's it's becoming reduced consistently. Why we can't watch the 10-minute videos anymore. And it comes to a point of, like we were talking about with the Good Samaritan, our focus is being
now we can't
stolen
focus on people
constantly, and we're not focused on God, like our ability to focus on, when we're focused on God and have those effects that are peripheral effects, but things that when we're focused on God, physically, when we're interacting with the world, our focuses shift to those things that glorify God, so we can focus on our rest, and then we can focus on our work.
Our focus
It's
isn't
like the 3
just being
Cs.
stolen either. It's
Right.
being like prostituted.
Well, it's being
that's
monetized.
because
it's being monetized.
We're
Yeah.
we're giving it away. It's our choice. Yes, there's things in place that we can say, oh, it's not my decision. There's algorithms. It's hard. Yeah, it's hard, but we're making that decision.
Correct.
You have a phone.
My spiritual formation teacher says attention is the greatest commodity
Yeah.
in the
It
21st
is.
century.
Yeah,
for now.
exactly.
Yeah,
And
and
it's going to be relationships. Did he talk about that?
yeah, he did talk about that. How did you know that? Did you listen
We'll
to
talk about it later.
Okay, that's exactly what he said.
Yeah.
And there's, I'm gonna.
We'll talk about
Table
it
it for
later.
later. So he said that the greatest commodity in this generation is attention, because none of us can give it because of what we've all been talking about.
Right.
And worship, this is a definition, the definition of worship from Celebration of Christian Discipline by Richard Foster, which was written in I think it was like the 70s, was worship, which is what we must be doing at all times, is giving God attention, giving God all of your attention.
Yeah.
And the way you love others is giving them all your attention.
Right.
And God, the summation of the law that Jesus gives us is love God, love others. And if attention is the active ingredient in that, and the world is stealing our attention, monetizing our attention, and debilitating our ability to give it,
Yeah.
that's horrifying.
It's incapacitating
and it's-
Christians.
and
It's
not just stealing-
incapacitating them from doing
Yeah.
that real Christianity we're
even-
talking
And it's
not
about.
not just
ourselves.
stealing our attention now, but because intention is the greatest commodity, and then you throw a relationship in there. It's so many things. What it's come down to now is it's like the world is literally trying to consume us. So it's not just sin and temptation trying to make us make certain decisions. It wants to consume us. We are now living in an age where there's so many things that can be captured and monetized. It is not just our attention. It is not just our relationships. It is maximizing the monetization of our time. Like our time, as in the quantity of time that we are on this earth, our existence. It is our whole. It is holistically our entire being. Technology is being implemented into our physical biology. It is now a part. They have monetized our memories, our communication, our entertainment, our food. Now every single thing we do now is controlled and monetized. And so it's like, do we want to?
They're eating parts of us.
They are, and now it's a matter of it's really black and white of, do we give our holistic self to the world, or do we give our holistic self to God?
And that's what rest ultimately comes down to.
And that's why we look so set apart.
Breaking from the world.
Yeah,
It's saying,
and
I'm spending a day cut off.
And that's why we look so set apart, because now it's all of ourselves. Just like the world wants to consume all of us and make us fully and assimilate our being into it, so do we now have to go out of our way to assimilate our being with God.
Yeah.
And that just one last little thing that goes right into the image that you gave of pornography, because that's a microcosm of what's
Right,
we're kind of
yeah.
doing bigger picture of it's the light fish, right? Of on the surface it looks like we're just consuming, and on the surface it looks like we're going after that pleasure, that attention, that stimulation that we're consuming, but it's consuming us.
Correct.
We're the main course.
And that's why when you look at that, and when you look at the world, the devil is behind all of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not just some random force that they got lucky. You know what I mean? No, it's the devil using the same tactics, but to a greater degree.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And the devil knows what our greatest need is nourishment. And Jesus says, I am the bread, I am the wine. God's fountains are never ending. He explicitly says, come to me for that nourishment, come to me for that.
And Satan gives a dangling carrot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we're always just like chasing after it, and then we run right off the cliff at the end of our life.
Well, in closing, I'm glad we're not hypocritical, because we are definitely not making short form content. This
No.
is a
Yeah.
43-minute episode. at the
Look at
moment.
you.
So
You sat through
Yeah.
if you got to this
Good
point,
job, guys.
say your favorite color down in the comment section.
it. We don't
no.
really do much of that
That's
interaction,
true.
do we?
That's kind of interesting.
There is no parasocial relationship going on here whatsoever.
Y'all mean nothing to us.
I actually
We don't care
I
about
want to
the
do an
world.
episode on parasocial relationships because oh my gosh, we could do an episode on that.
No, there's so that. Don't spoil anything. or
Stay
do
tuned.
because it keeps
Just
people
kidding.
entertained. But I think something we should do ritualistically in the future is just at the end of every episode. If you got this far, thank you.
Yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank
And I
you,
hope
Thank
this
you.
provided something
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There
And
go
that's
the-
honestly
the
why we do
girls
it.
again.
It's just
Yeah.
like the anyone. It,
Bye guys.
Ladies.
You're making cookies?
Oh, can I have one? Yeah.
All right, goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.